The story of a day is the story of the biggest fraudster in America and perhaps the world. Imagine that he impersonated a pilot, a doctor, a university professor, and a lawyer. So in order to know the story, don't forget to like and subscribe. Frank Abagnale. This is the focus of a person who is the focus of our story. Frank was born in New Rochelle, New York in 1948 to an American father named William Frank Abagnale and a French mother named Paula. He is the third among his siblings, as there are two older twins and a younger sister. At the age of 16, his parents divorced, which Frank could not bear, so he ran away from a court session to begin his career in a legal business. Frank's father was the first victim of fraud, as he gave him a credit card to buy fuel for the car. But Frank took advantage of the opportunity and started buying car parts that were only available on paper because he agreed with a gas station employee to put the value of the car parts on his father's account, and then they split the amount. Together, the amount reached $3,400, which is equivalent to $28,394 in 2019, and Frank, who was only 15 years old when he committed it, was not held accountable for this crime. Frank's first trick was by writing personal checks to withdraw money, but this was for a short period before the bank demanded payment, which prompted him to open different accounts in several banks with fake identities, and later he invented other ways to deceive banks, such as printing checks similar to bank checks and convincing banks to cash them from his accounts. Abagnale decided to impersonate a pilot so he could cash checks more legitimately. He obtained the uniform from Pan American Airlines after claiming that he had lost his uniform while cleaning his hotel room. Of course, he obtained the uniform under a fake ID and then forged a pilot certificate from the Federal Aviation Administration. Abagnale noticed that his hair had turned gray, which he exploited to impersonate a pilot because the gray hair made him look older than his real age and also made him more professional than he was. As a pilot, he flew thousands of miles and stayed in hotels for free, with the airline paying for food and lodging. However, he never actually flew Pan American planes and was adept at getting away with it while frequently flying on police planes, knowing that his trick would be exposed by the real pilots. However, he occasionally sat in the cockpit with the crew and dated several flight attendants. Pan Am estimates that Abagnale traveled illegally to 66 countries over a distance of more than 1,000 miles using the deadheading feature. The term means that a pilot travels as a passenger to bring a plane from another airport. And after that, Abagnale claimed that he worked for one semester as a sociology teacher at Brigham Young University under the name Frank Abagnale, but the university denied this. After that, he impersonated a doctor and said that impersonating a doctor was very easy. He worked for about a year as a pediatrician at a hospital in Georgia under the name Frank Williams. In his application for housing, he wrote under the previous job the profession of doctor, fearing that the landlord would discover that he worked as a pilot for Pan Am. He shared an apartment with a real doctor and worked as a supervising physician for trainees until another doctor could be found to replace him. He never bothered to work because he was not assigned any medical work in this position. As for dealing with patients, he consulted with in-house doctors to take care of the matter. Abagnale was almost discovered when an infant was in critical condition from lack of oxygen and was about to suffocate and did not understand what the nurse meant when she said "blue baby." Abagnale was able to escape with his skin when the hospital brought in a substitute supervisor, and he was able to leave the hospital without being discovered. After that, Abagnale became a lawyer after forging a law degree from Harvard University, passing the eligibility exam, and getting a job as a prosecutor in Louisiana when he was 19 years old. Abagnale told a flight attendant he was briefly married to that he had studied law at Harvard University. She introduced him to a friend of hers who told him that the court needed lawyers and he had to apply to join it. So Abagnale forged his university degree and took the bar exam. Despite failing twice to pass the exam, he was able to pass it legally after 8 weeks of real study. Many questions were following Abagnale about his studies and graduation from Harvard University, and he was unable to answer any of them because he had never attended the university in the first place. After 8 months of impersonating a lawyer, he decided to leave the position after learning that there was a young man who suspected him. It is worth noting that law was the last illegal profession Abagnale worked in. Arrested in France in 1969 while working as an employee for Air France after being identified on a wanted poster, authorities in 12 countries where he had been committing fraud demanded his extradition, and he was sentenced to 1 year in prison, reduced to 6 months. He was then extradited to Sweden to stand trial on charges of forgery, but his lawyer was able to drop the charge on the grounds that he had made the checks and not forged them, so the charges of fraud and forgery remain. After his imprisonment in Malmö, the Swedish judge asked a U.S. State Department official to withdraw his passport, after which he was deported to the United States without a Swedish passport after boarding the VC-10 plane that was taking him to the United States, and less than 3 meters before it landed on the runway, Abagnale jumped out of the plane and managed to escape. After the night was over, he took a taxi that took him to Grand Central Station. While in the Bronx, he changed his clothes and retrieved the keys to a safe in a Montreal bank that contained $20,000, $100,000 today. He then bought a ticket from Pierre Elliott Trudeau Airport to travel to the city of Sao Paulo in Brazil, a country that does not have an extradition agreement with the United States. However, upon his return to Montreal, he was interrogated by an officer of the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, and was later handed over to the United States Border Patrol. In 1971, Abagnale escaped from the Federal Detention Center in Georgia while awaiting trial. Fortunately for Abagnale, the inspector forgot his detention papers, which made Abagnale a secret inspector and gave him much better privileges than his colleagues. Abagnale was sentenced to 12 years in prison, but served less than 7 of that time. The Federal Correctional Institution released him on condition that he work with them without pay investigating fraud crimes. Abagnale tried various jobs, such as cooking, grocery shopping, and movie theater, but failed in most of them after his criminal past was discovered. He started working at a bank with a presentation where he explained what he had done and talked to the bank employee about the tricks used to forge checks to deceive banks. The presentation included a condition that if they did not find any benefit in his work, the bank was not obligated to give him anything. On the other hand, the bank would only give him $50 with an agreement that the bank would register his name with other banks. Thus began Abagnale's new and legitimate life as a security consultant. In 2015, Abagnale was named an ambassador for fraud control for the American Association of Retirees, where he taught clients via internet programs and social forums how to protect themselves from identity theft and cybercrime. In 2018, he began presenting a radio recording titled, The Perfect Fraud, that talks about scammers and the nature of their work. Abagnale has published several books about fraud and scams, one of which is titled, Catch Me If You Can, in which he talks about the stages of his life from the beginning of his life of crime until he got involved in the field of fighting crime. In 2002, a movie with the same title was released about the life of Abagnale, played by Leonardo DiCaprio, after he met the real Abagnale. Despite the clear change in some details from the truth, Abagnale had no objection because he believed that the movie was just a novel of a story and not his autobiography. Abagnale currently lives on Daniel Island near Charleston, South Carolina, with his wife Kelly, whom he met when he worked as a secret inspector. He has 3 sons, Chris, Sean, and Scott, who works for.
One other tip I'll give you is I don't own a debit card. I've never owned one. I've never allowed my 3 sons to possess one. Certainly and truly the worst financial tool ever given to the American consumer. So a long time ago I asked myself a simple question: how would I remove 99.9% of my personal liability like that? So I use the safest form of payment that exists on the face of the earth, and that is a credit card. Visa, MasterCard, American Express, Discover Card. Not debit credit, but credit card. Every day of my life, I spend their money. I don't spend my money. My money sits in a money market account. It earns interest. Actually, nobody knows where it is because it's not exposed to anybody to find it. It's just sitting there. I go to the dry cleaner, I give them my card. I pick up the groceries, I give them my card. I put fuel in my boat on the weekend, I use my card.
And here we have reached the end of the story. Don't forget to like and subscribe.